Difficult. Women.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to your own home.
Or your car.
Or your car.
Or welcome to your ears. Your own ears.
Welcome to your brain.
Yeah, this is Marie.
I'm Katy. This is the Difficult Women podcast.
When our powers combine, you get
this mediocre podcast. No, it's a very good podcast. It's a very, very good podcast. We are excellent.
We are excellent. It's excellent to be here. Again, we're in the same room, you guys.
This is incredible, but very far apart.
Yep. About 6 feet, I would say.
Yeah. One tallish man's length apart from each other. That's how I think about it. 6 feet. One pretty tall guy's, one very short Swedish guy's distance apart.
Oh.
Aren't Swedish guys very tall? Is that racist? Did I just say? Yeah, maybe.
No, I think we're one turkey vulture away from each other. Or
With
at least the wingspan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a sign for that. I was like, that's one way to do it.
That is one way to do it. I'll take it.
I'll take it.
I haven't seen a turkey vulture, but I can imagine.
Yes. The wingspan of 6 feet being like, do not get this close.
One small pterodactyl apart.
Oh, see, now we're talking.
There we go. Anyway, what are we talking about?
I don't know, you guys. Welcome.
Hello. My God, how has your week been?
So great. I don't know. The news. This week we're going to do like a news roundup.
Yes,
because I
like
think we both just need a second to digest what has happened in the news this week.
It's been very complicated.
It's been very complicated. And I admit, I had a really rough night one night of just reading the news and watching all the video footage that's taking place in Portland and just reading about what possibly could come in the future if we have a dictator and all this stuff. And so I couldn't sleep. But instead of just reeling, I got in my car because I have a car now in New York City. Oh my God, it's terrifying. But I drove out to Brighton Beach and I went swimming. And it just being off my phone and not focusing and just being in nature, breathing and understanding that this is the moment and it will change, it will pass, but we have to fucking fight.
Gotta get through it first.
And get through it, yeah. But so that was my week of just like trying to be aware, but also like taking care of myself. Oh, and I have something really crazy to tell you. Not crazy.
God, what is
it? Some big news.
Okay,
and I have to thank you.
Oh.
And my accouability group, because I have a group of friends that help me with art and stuff. But I have my very first therapy appointment tomorrow.
Yay! That's very exciting.
I'm so nervous.
It's okay. You started to be like a little nervous.
I talked to her on the phone and I was really nervous just for that first interaction, but our vibe really worked. I told her I thought we were vibing really well.
That's great.
And she's older than I am. That was my only request because a friend of mine was trying to help me find somebody within my insurance too. And she's older and we're just going to do it virtually because obviously.
That's perfect.
And it's 50-minute session.
Great. Perfect.
So I don't know.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
And the first one, it'll be a little like, oh, where do I begin? But she'll just be like, tell me about yourself and what made you want to call me.
Yeah.
And then you will just go from there.
I told her I want my groove back. Have you seen that movie?
Right. Yeah.
And she was like, no.
How Marie got her groove back. It was a very famous movie.
Yeah. That's basically. She did ask me, why do you want a therapist?
Right,
and I struggled with that of, I feel broken. No, but that wasn't
my life is falling apart or whatever you want to say.
No.
No, it's not. Your life is not. I mean, everybody's life is falling apart. But that in itself is a good reason to see a therapist. Everything is very stressful right now.
Yeah. So and I've been turning to my friends and especially my poor mother. I call her every day now and talk to her about stuff. But I think it's really important for me personally, who has for years been against therapy. I mean, we've talked about this, and that I'm just like, no, I'm better than that. I don't need that. I got my mother. But no, there comes a time where, mom doesn't have all the answers. And so I'm looking forward to this. So.
And the truth is, like, your therapist won't have the answers. You have the answers, but you have to be with somebody who can point you that way. And your mom whether she knows it or not or likes it or not, she has ulterior motives too because she's your mother.
Right.
And that's and every mother has that.
She's
it's not your
biased.
mother. It's every mother's biased.
Yeah.
So you need to just be able to have somebody who's totally not biased. So you can really look at yourself without being in having any kind of interference from a friend or a mother's perspective or anybody else's perspective. So I'm excited for you. What a journey.
What a journey.
It's going to be great.
Ooh. So, but I have to thank you because you've been a huge advocate for it. So.
Love therapy.
Yeah.
Therapy. I was going to say I'm a therapy baby, but that sounds weird. Like I was born into therapy. I was not. I didn't start going until later, but I love it. It's been great.
Well, how was your week?
God, if I can make one request of everybody on this planet is to not park in the bike lane. Don't park in the bike lane.
Yeah,
just like
I know.
Cannot. I've been riding my bike to and from work, and I just cannot. I don't understand. Today, coming over here with my bike, there was a guy parked in the bike lane, and then the whole entire street is totally open for double parking. You can double park anywhere else you want to double park.
Right.
It's already double parked on this side. Somebody decided to double park directly across from the other guy that was double parked on this whole empty street.
Great.
So
Perfect.
then it's like all the traffic and
it's
all
just
the,
trying to
and all the bikes and everybody just trying to get through there. I'm like, how? Come on, guys. Come on.
Well, I was riding yesterday in the bike lane and there was a guy in front of me and we're riding along. Everything's groovy. And all of a sudden the bike lane ends and it's a bus lane and the bus is coming straight towards us.
Who designed that?
I have no idea, but it literally is just a gap in the bike lane for the bus to like come and collide with your face.
That is the dumbest design.
The most terrifying.
No, that's terrible.
Thing.
That's terrible.
Isn't that? Yeah.
Yeah. We need I have a friend who actually just moved to Nashville and she's like getting into urban planning and we need to have her come back and redo the bike lanes here.
Yeah. I really do think that New York is going to become a super bike town after all this.
That would be great. We should be. We might as well. I mean, we have a lot of bikers. We can't bike safely. So
no, and I also have questions for the electronic bikes and the small scooters and motorcycles that are all of a sudden in the bike lanes.
Why are they in the bike lanes?
Yeah.
It's not. The other thing about the scooters is it makes me mad.
This is a bike podcast now?
Yeah.
just like bitch about bikes.
It makes me mad because my bike it's supposed to be a 3-speed. I've told you this before, but it's like
an antique.
It's from like 1965. Oh, it's this old bike. Jeez. And it's supposed to be 3-speed, but really it's only 1 speed and it's only the hard speed. So like I'm always just pumping around. And there's this girl today that kept like passing me and then I'd get mad at her, so I'd pass her. But she definitely had a fancy ass bike, and I was like, get out of here with your nice bike. Let me be pumping over here, okay? Just give me this one thing.
Just give me this
Come on
thing.
Yeah. Anyway,
bikes. Go bikes.
Go bikes. You know where you probably can't buy a bike.
You get the opposite of a bike.
You get
something to ride.
Absolutely something to ride. Thank you. That was genius.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take it away.
Free stuff is awesome, but free stuff to spice up your bedroom is even better.
Select almost any one item for 50% off, and then Adam and Eve loads on the free stuff.
Enter offer code HORIO at checkout and get 10 tantalizing free gifts.
A sexy item for him, a special gift for her, and a third item you'll both enjoy.
And 6 free spicy movies.
Ooh! Plus, free shipping.
That's HORIO, WHOREO, HORIO at adamandeve.com.
Dun, 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 this just in. This week was terrible.
Oh, yeah.
That's my news.
Oh my God. I'm kind of excited about this episode though, because there's just what I think is kind of cool about what's going on right now, even though it's like horrible and terrifying, is it's very nuanced.
Yes.
And everybody wants to, we're living in a time right now, especially I think, where everyone wants to spin things really black and white, but things are so nuanced. And like it really is forcing, I mean, you don't have to think about it if you don't want to, but if you really want to like unpack these things, you really have to go deep. And that makes me excited.
Yes. But also on the other side of it is that there's so many opinions, because we have Twitter and Instagram and just so many platforms and people are able to now more than ever to stand up on a platform and say, I believe this, or I believe this, or I think this, I'm speculating this, and whatever. So
that's a good point too. Yeah. And I think that there's a difference too. And we're definitely living in a world where people say, this is the answer. And then everybody has a different opinion. When really probably what we should be doing is saying, these things are complicated. not one person's going to have the answer. So why don't we listen to all these different perspectives instead? So that's what I'm more interested in versus saying like, you're wrong.
Who's right?
You're right. You're wrong.
Yeah. I think that's...
If you park in the bike lane, you're wrong. But other than that...
so let's get into it.
Where
so
shall
the
we
first
begin?
thing I want to start with the naked Athena.
Yes, the Portland Athena.
The Portland naked woman that graced us all.
Streets of Portland.
Yes.
So this came up, and the reason we decided to do this podcast is because so full disclosure, we'll just tell a little behind the scenes. I posted a Woman Crush Wednesday of that photo, and then Marie commented on that photo that she was like, this smacks of white privilege to me. And I was like, we need to have a podcast about this because it's so complicated. I think that this is where I don't think it's that black and white. And this particular story to me is there's so many twists and turns to like unpacking it. One of the first of which is that this particular woman the story, maybe we should say what the story is before.
Tell the story, and then I want to tell the story. Yes. And then after you finish the story, I want to ask you a question.
Absolutely. So the story is that the protests were happening. The federal agents, if you do not know, federal agents, which means that Trump has sent agents in to Portland to stop the protesters. And what they have done is they have come in and in unmarked vehicles in full military gear, which can be purchased on Amazon, by the way. So anyone can kind of just dress up like a federal agent and throw you into their van because they're not identifying themselves. God. They're not saying I'm an agent, whatever.
Right.
They're just grabbing random people off the streets, some of which who are not even protesting, by the way.
Right.
Just living their lives. They're just randomly grabbing people and throwing them into unmarked vans and then detaining them and not explaining why. So they're not getting their Miranda rights when they're being detained. And then people are mostly getting released, but there's been some, I don't know, no one's died yet, but
there were people missing for days.
Yes, but people have been,
Could you imagine us going to a protest, a peaceful protest, mind you, if we were at something like that, and then all of a sudden you disappear for 3 fucking days? Are you kidding me?
It's horrifying. And people have definitely they're not getting fed, they're not getting water, so they're definitely not being...
And they're not getting answers when they ask, like, what am I here for?
And I have to say, just on a side note, that these protests are peaceful, but even if they were not peaceful, it is illegal to grab someone off the street, not announce who you are, throw them in an unmarked van, not be read your rights, and then detain them and not give a reason why they're being detained. All of that is illegal, even if you are committing a crime. So already there's just like so many things wrong with this.
Didn't Portland, now they have a restraining order against the federal agents?
I think that I'm like a little behind in some of this news, but I did see something along those lines. So I don't know exactly.
Yes,
the ACLU has been fighting this really hard with every ounce that they have, because this is really what the ACLU is for.
Right.
So anyway, back to the Athena woman. She then in the middle of the night, like 1:30 in the morning, the protests are still going on. There's these federal agents kind of at a standoff with these other protesters. And out of nowhere, this naked woman, she was wearing a mask though, which I thought was
and a cute little beanie.
And a little beanie. And she comes out and she's totally naked. And then she sits in between the federal agents and the protesters with her legs akimbo. And from what I understand, there's not video footage that I could find, so this is all kind of like...
I watched a full video.
Oh, there is a video.
Yeah,
I would like to see the video.
Yeah.
So anyway, from what I understand, another protester came to sort of shield her, and then she walked around that person and sat back down again. There was some reports originally that she was not shot at, that because she was like a white, it was assumed she was white, and because she was white that nobody shot at her, which was untrue. It turns out they were shooting at her. She got shot in the foot a couple times and they were attacking her basically. And then, but here's the part of the story that like, this is what is different to me. Number one, she's still unnamed. So she's still anonymous, which I think to me, that's a really big part of that story. The second thing about it is that they left, right?
Yeah, they backed away.
After
10 minutes or 15, I guess she was in the area, it's doing her thing for 15 minutes.
And then they left.
Yeah.
So that to me is one of the most important parts of this too.
So here's my question.
Yes.
So the first thing I saw was that picture of that powerful picture of this woman with her legs open towards all men. You
Right,
see,
right.
I mean, I can't like. I'm speculating because I can't confirm that they're all men,
Sure,
but I'm assuming
certainly primarily men.
Right.
At minimum.
Right. All the federal agents all dressed up in their fancy little, costumes or whatever. I don't think that's how they go by.
Costumes.
Their costumes for the show. But that image, how did that image make you feel? What was the first thing you thought of when you saw that image?
So this is the other thing that I love about this whole thing. I also want to mention, some people were saying, people were saying that like this was staged and that guy knew her and he like followed her out and he took the picture. He actually is he's a wedding photographer in Portland, and he'd been going out to the protests for a couple of days just taking pictures. He said a lot of the photos he'd been taking were just like literally like he'd be getting shot at, so he'd like have his like camera at his hip facing the agents as he's like running away. So he posted, at the time he had 2 little like carousels of pictures on Instagram, and it was by far mostly pictures of just like the agents like shooting and the guns firing, and they were cool pictures. And then tucked away in the middle of these photos just happened to be that Athena picture, which he didn't think much about. I think he thought it was a cool picture, but it wasn't like the one he chose to show off on his Instagram. It was like the 5th one in or something. And then the New York Times found it when they were like looking for pictures for protest pictures, and they contacted him and they said, can we use this? So they were the ones that like discovered the picture. It wasn't like he came with her, like he didn't know who she was. So I just want to clarify that too.
Right.
And then the question is, how does it make me feel? I mean, my first sort of thought was like, she crazy. Like that's like that's crazy, you know? But I also thought like, to me, part of it is you have to kind of know what the story is.
Right.
And when I heard that they left, I was like, this is fucking incredible. This is just so fucking incredible. That was my first thought after I kind of knew what was going on there. And I didn't really think much of, I was aware that it was a white woman or a white present. This is the other thing about it. So if things aren't like complicated enough, she then apparently, according to someone that knows her or some other protesters that know her, they say that she's a person of color, but white presenting and not black. So we don't know specifically what, and she certainly looks white presenting from the back at least. So that is definitely an element in all of this. I was like aware she was white and that's like questionable to some degree, but the power of that like image was so strong to me that I was like, should this be the image that we then take with us, the singular image that we say Black Lives Matter movement? No, of course not.
Right.
She's a white woman, like of course not. But I think to me what it was about, again, this is through the lens of a white woman too. I'm a white woman. To me, partly what it was about was the feds had come in. And like, it was more about, it wasn't like just the regular, people keep being like, oh, the police. I'm like, this isn't the police. We're not talking about the police. This wasn't just like, this didn't just happen at a regular, protest. This happened like in the middle of this Fed takeover. But that's not even, I have more to say about this.
Yeah.
What was your first impression? White privilege?
Well, when I saw it, number one, I thought pussy power. Like the power of the pussy.
Right. That was,
Seeing these men. And I only saw the image. So I think that image as a photographer, whoever took that picture, whether it's staged or whatever the fuck was going on, that is a moment. Like, we should always celebrate art no matter what.
Sure.
We should always there's so many stories behind photographs, whatever. It's a moment in time that was captured and it should be celebrated. So number one, I think that when I first saw that, I was like, I hope that goes in a museum someday, because that is a very powerful photograph, no matter what the circumstances are. This is a moment in time in July in 2020, what we're experiencing. But then I started just really just looking at it and observing it and thinking and reading, and you start reading like what the fuck the story is, and the way, I think it was like LA Times, the way that the media talked about it was like, through the tear gas, an apparition appeared, and it was this woman, and the men shaking in their army boots backed away, and blah, and then I started reading the story and how that the media was portraying the story. It made me so sad. It really made me sad because I immediately thought, if this was a Black woman, what would the outcome have been?
Sure.
And also, is this, and I don't know the answer to this,
right,
but is this helping the cause or hindering it? Because the reason people are protesting in Portland, which is 70% white, which we have to remember, Portland is predominantly white people, is this upstaging the actual Black Lives Matter cause, or is it helping it or hindering it? So is it a cheer or a jeer?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What is it?
And I think that we'll never have an answer to this. This is what I love about this, is that I think this is a complex thing, because on the one, and I'm going to sort of play not devil's advocate. I have so many different opinions about it myself internally. One of which is, here's a strike against her in that act. One of probably the biggest strike against her is that the conversation, we need to keep the conversation on protecting Black lives.
Right.
That we
all of a
have
sudden
to
we're not, we're having a podcast right 100%. Now not talking about Black Lives Matter,
I think we are, but we're talking about because I think this, we have to have this conversation too, because on the one hand, does it shift the conversation away? Yes, that is a problem. We cannot allow that. We have to continue to have that conversation. So, but it doesn't mean having this conversation is mutually exclusive to having that conversation. So we can have both. Did the LA Times do this sensational story about it? Yeah, that was fucked up. Every media cover, you Google naked Athena, and it is all, there's a lot of these.
There's so much about this woman using her body and her, just her gravitas or whatever to make them back away.
Right. So, two things about that. It would be interesting to know what would have happened if it had been a Black woman. We don't really know, but it would have. Our guess is that it wouldn't have been painted quite so savior-like.
There's a woman in 2014 that stood with a dress on,
right,
doing the exact same thing, a Black woman, and she was forced to the ground and arrested. So the same scenario.
Right, totally. So this is then where I start to wonder, okay, what if we know, or we're quite sure that if a Black woman was to go out and do something like that this Athena woman, the white presenting woman did, that and be killed or arrested, if you have a white body doing it to instead, she got them to leave. She did the thing that they were trying to get him to do, and it was so. I guess, and again, I don't have an answer for this, and I'm not sure how I feel about this either. But I do wonder about what is then, where's the space for white bodies then to stand in front of these Black bodies to protect them and do the things that we know at this moment Black people are not able to do without getting murdered.
Right.
That's my question. So now this is what she did is so extreme, because it's it was sensational in the sense that she's naked and stuff, but it was also incredibly powerful because of all those things. And if she had just sort of stood there, they wouldn't have left. You know what I mean? That just wouldn't have, it just would have been a different story. There's a really, really good article in the New York Times that just came out a day ago, written by a Black woman who grew up in Portland. And I loved sort of how she framed it too, because now I've been sort of supporting this idea of well, maybe the Athena person is a good thing. And she kind of comes in and says well, here are the things that and even she doesn't have an answer. She's grappling with these things too. But at the end of the article, she says, in front of my high school, or a friend's high school that was a primarily Black high school, there was images of this Thomas Jefferson statue being torn down. And she goes, I walked past that statue just countless times, and never once did it occur to me that I could tear that statue down. And the truth is, as a Black person, she could not. She could, if she had torn that statue down, that would have been, she could have been shot immediately. But it takes a group of white people to tear it down. So then the question becomes, do we not tear it down? unless we let black people do it. But if black people do it, they get shot and they can't do it. So like, do you see like how there's this like conundrum here? And it's a very like, we are tap dancing around a very fine line of like, where does white, and she says it in the article too, where does white allyship become taking over the narrative? And where is it where we really need your body to do this for us because I'm saying we as if I'm black, but because the black person cannot do these things.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you've seen the videos of the white people in the very violent protests here, even in New York City. When I was in Nashville, I was watching all this footage of like very brave white women that I saw in the video putting themselves as barriers between them and the police and the black people. So like that I can get behind. Yeah. With this particular thing, again, like I think it's art, sure. Like, was it performance art? Was it whatever? Like, we'll never know because she's anonymous and not,
which I think is great, by the way.
Which is great.
I love
Very
it.
Smart.
Like,
love it.
But it's not even smart. I think it's like,
but she's not. It is smart because she's not making it about her.
That's what I mean.
It's like
it makes it possible for us to have this conversation,
right?
Because if she were to come out and say, like, "Well, I did it because of I
like,
wanted to get more likes on Instagram," it would be like. Then I would be like, "Well, fuck that girl." Like it would just be so easy to just write it off. But because we don't know,
but I love it that it's up for interpretation.
Totally.
So like, there's no answers. You know, even a friend has been quoted saying that she is an actual Asian woman. A light-skinned Asian woman. But then even other articles were like, yeah, but if everything is anonymous and we don't know who this person is, who is this friend and where did they talk to this friend and who, like, what, you know, so it's like a lot of unpacking.
But you know what I think is a more interesting conversation? We can definitely be like, she's lying. She's not lying. She is white. No, I'm not saying you're doing that, but I think people definitely are doing that online.
Right.
I think a more interesting conversation to have would be, what is whiteness? Because I think that part of, and I don't have an answer to this either, but this is, so like, if she had been a person of color, but if she had been biracial and black, let's say specifically, of course now we're just in hypothetical land, but if she had been black and biracial but very white presenting, what kind of a narrative does that make it, right? If she is Asian and white presenting Asian, what does that story tell? Right. And here's another question I have, because then she's also very attractive. At least her body is and she's very young. Right. What if she had been an overweight woman in her 25?
That's immediately what I thought of.
What would that be?
Right.
What if she was an elderly woman?
What if she was transgender?
I
mean, there's a lot. Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think that's to me, that's just an interesting. If we're going to say she used her white privilege, I would say 100% she did. I'm not denying that she used her privilege. She used her age privilege. She used her body appearance privilege. She used her white privilege, and she got something accomplished. That's where I get stuck on this. And it's not so easy for me to say like, oh, white privilege, because I'm like, she actually did something really cool in that moment that was helpful, kind of. Because it actually like physically got them to stop and go.
Well, it is amazing that. So I mean,
is
how
it
many
the
days
right time or is it the right? I don't know. That I'm not sure.
Well,
about,
apparently with that night too, the police were there and the federal agents apparently, because in one video the police are there clearing the streets and stuff. But it sounded like they were herding these protesters into a particular spot, which they really like to trap them, sort of thing. Right. So in a way, like. They're trapped. And so for this person, this naked Athena, to appear and then get them to back away
with her naked body. I mean, that's the other part of this. It wasn't just like she had a gun and was like, get whack. She like sat there naked. Well,
the video is I guess the video came out a couple days ago, and it really does. I mean, it kind of shows this woman coming out of nowhere. And to be honest, I mean, just from the video, there's not that many people around.
Sure. But
still. But then there was a man who was like trying to shield her, and they do show footage of that. And then she's like,
get out of here.
But the big thing is that she remained silent the whole time, and the media is trying to say that she did ballet poses or that she had been shot in the foot, and so that's why she was off her feet. But when you watch the video, it's very obvious that like she is posing. Yeah, it's like, but it's like a goddess, a Greek goddess who poses or something. And that they were shooting things all around until, I mean, they did stop. So that's very powerful. But I mean, the reason why we're having this is this conversation is because I saw the image, I read the story, I watched the videos, and then you did post that picture, and I was like, damn it. I don't know. I did have questions of like, do I support this image on our platform? Because I'm grappling with what it means to me. And I'm glad you did. I understand why you did. But I think that it is important to, it really still does scream white privilege. Even learning that she is a person of color. She's like, identifying with light skin.
Well, I feel like the place where I feel like I made a mistake is, and I'm very, very willing to admit this, I don't regret posting that image. And I think that image is really important for so many reasons. What I regret was that prior to that, I never posted a Woman Crush Wednesday, because of Woman Crush Wednesday post. I hadn't posted a Woman Crush Wednesday post of a Black protester bravely standing up to the police. Mm-hmm. That's what I regret. Isn't that I posted this one, it's that I only posted that one. Mm-hmm. And I would like to post, I will fully admit that it's a little too late on my part, because I fucked up in that I saw that image and chose that one. And for whatever reason, even though I am moved by these other ones, I didn't choose that one, another one, Right. So that is on me. And that is definitely my white lens for sure, seeing that, I think. So I'm definitely willing to admit that wrong.
But it was also interesting. I mean, I too, immediately when I saw it, I was like, oh, this has difficult women branding all over it. Right, this is incredible. But I mean, I think that because of our podcast, we've been really trying to like not take things at first glance. And so like really doing the due diligence and understanding. And so that's when I started diving in. And then that is when I started having these feelings of like, man, this is kind of gross. And it's been interesting too. Like I posted a little thing on my personal Instagram, and other friends, all other white women kind of saying how they were feeling about it as well. And it's just like, we don't know the real story. So like, we're all just speculating at this point. Yeah. But one of the first comments I got was like, they're glorifying this and making it revolutionary, but what if this person had been Black? And
totally.
But also, I mean, for me specifically, it's like, a person who has struggled with weight and dieting and blah. It's like I saw like a beautiful white, skinny woman. So like, I mean, there's a lot. Again, I'm glad it happened. I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah, me too.
And that's what makes fucking America great and free. And I think, what she did was really powerful. But I do think that it's worth talking about. And I'm glad that we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it is not, I did not go into that picture looking at it being like, perfect, this woman is whatever. No, it's not that. Yeah. But I think the reason why I posted it then, when I chose to actually post it as opposed to just like looking at it and having a feeling, was that when I saw the picture, I was on some sort of a thing that had all these comments. Oh, I know. It was on the other Instagram post that I reposted it from. And it was like, how does this picture make you feel?
And
when I read, I was reading through people's things, and I was so disheartened by people's responses.
Oh, what were they saying?
So this, and I want to just preface this by saying that let's remind ourselves again that one of the problems with this photo is that it does take us away from having the conversation about Black Lives Matter, and that's clearly problematic. But from a feminist perspective, what stood out to me was that so many women were commenting saying like, this woman is disgusting. She's using her body in a disgusting way. This is sexual assault because she's naked in front of people that don't want to see her naked. And that made me think about sexual assault. And I was like, well, what is to me, sexual assault? Like when you like whip your dick out in front of somebody, right? And then we were like, well, that's sexual assault. For me, it's about intent, right? So like when somebody's sexually aroused and trying to do some sort of sexual thing with somebody and then they take their clothes off, that's sexual assault. If there's a man and he's your boss and he's older than you and you're kind of at his mercy and you're at a meeting with him and then all of a sudden his pants catch on fire and he has to take his pants off, that's not sexual assault. Right. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter.
Well, who set the fire? No.
Maybe his loins are on fire for you as an intern. But I mean, I'm just saying that like
Right.
context is everything.
Right.
And to me that was like where people's conversations were going, that she was sexually assaulting these police officers.
That's so
I was
interesting.
I was like, you are totally fucking with like, we are born naked.
Mm-hmm.
So are we sexually assaulting the doctors when we're born? I mean, I don't understand. Like, there's got to be a limit to, and those are very liberal people making these comments, right? This super, super hyper aware, like, well, exposing yourself as sexual assault, so that she is just doing the same thing that men do all the time. Is she? Is that really what's going on here? So I think part of what like drove me to post it was those conversations that I was seeing too, which is also totally a contextual thing too, from my perspective, and also and myopic in that I wasn't necessarily thinking about like, again, changing the narrative. I was thinking more about like, this narrative is that they're trying to tell me about the sexual assault shit. I'm like, that is unacceptable, you know, and that is not what this is about.
Well, I fell down a wormhole of protesting as a naked human being has been a thing for a very long time.
Probably since the dawn of protesting.
And so much so that in Portland, they actually have some sort of law that you can protest naked without being arrested. You can be naked protesting as long as you're not in a sexual act or sexually advancing something, you know. I mean, they have
intent,
law,
right?
Intent, yeah. So, but you also can't do it in state parks or something. It's some sort of like, they do have it as a law that you can protest naked. I believe you can protest, or you can be topless here. And I don't know what.
Well, you can be topless and walk around in New York City.
I mean, duh, every day,
all the time. That's how I got here. I'm just like, get out of my way, ding ding.
But it did make me stop it. So I started looking all these pictures of in the 70s people protesting naked, and how did that make me feel, and would I ever protest naked? Would you protest naked?
If I thought it was gonna like serve the purpose, sure. If I didn't, then no. And again, if this woman had come out, done her thing, and then nothing had changed, I think I would feel totally different about it. I think I wouldn't be so not quick, but I wouldn't be so supportive. Like, I think I'd be like, oh, that's interesting, or that's cool of that she did that, or you know, whatever. But there's something to me, what is so interesting to me about it is that those whatever federal agents were so like confused and confounded by, or just didn't know what the next step to take was, or whatever. I don't know what was going on. One of the other first things I thought when I saw it was witchcraft, and I like love that.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, that's one thing that I did also just really like identify with that.
Well, people are comparing her to like Joan of Arc or Lady Godiva, who rode on a horse naked. Yeah, but like,
I don't like the comparison of Joan of Arc, because Joan of Arc very much sacrificed her body for her country. Right. In her life. This woman just came out and was naked for a little bit. You know what I mean? And like, and she could, but she also was at risk. She put herself at risk for sure.
Right. Well, of course they had to. So I went to like, you know, the other side, and they were commenting about her 70s bush, and her armpit hair was glistening in the moonlight, and I was like, fuck you guys.
Whatever. Yeah. So I guess that to me, what also is just a part of this conversation, but again, it's like the and this is sort of an intersectional conversation too, in that like, especially because she is questionably white, but like that the women's rights is also very much, you know, actually here's the thing I really thought about the other day, is that because once these federal agents came in, not even once, the reason why we're having so much violence from the police departments during these particular protests versus like the women's rights protests or whatever, right? We're seeing way more violence against the protesters by a long shot, is because the subject matter is Black freedom, right? I think that we agree with that.
Yes, absolutely.
And that it has escalated now, the police presence, to where the president is sending in federal forces who are not identifying themselves and not following any laws, and then detaining people, and God knows what else could be down the line on that, right? I would make the argument that if you're somebody that's like these rioters and these, you know, Black lives, all lives matter, if you're one of those people, I really need you to look at what's happening in Portland and see that this, first of all, most of the people getting detained are white because there's not a lot of black people there.
Right.
So the white rights are also being infringed upon. And also, what is the next step here? You know what I mean? That being said, that is the reason why you All Lives Matter people need to shut the fuck up and get on the Black Lives Matter boat, because at the end of the day, what this has proven to me is that we are only as free as the least free individual in our country. The minute we try to get equal freedoms for everybody and the response is lock them all up, it shows us that white people have not been as free as they think they are too. Are they more privileged? Do they have way more privilege? 100 million trillion bazillion %. But their freedoms they'll be taken away quickly if they want to have equality for everybody too. Mm-hmm. So again, we just are never going to be free until everybody's free. And I've heard people say that before, but you're seeing it right now. It's happening. So if you're sitting on the sidelines, if you're listening to this and you're sitting on the sidelines of all these protests and you're sort of like, oh, I don't want to get involved. It doesn't really involve me. Oh, bitch, it involves all of us. You know, if we can't protect Black lives and we can't give equal freedoms, we're all fucked. We're all fucked. So that's the other thing about this in terms of like putting like white bodies at risk too. It's like, yeah, because we have to. Like we're the ones that like we're gonna get shot at last. We're gonna get like taken last. So we have to be the first to step in and stop it if you can. And so that's part of my like grappling with the Athena thing,
right?
You know,
it's made me reflect on my own personal ways of protesting and understanding where I feel comfortable or what makes me feel not so comfortable. Me understanding the color of my skin and what white privilege, how I can help the protest because of who I am and what I look like. But as far as getting naked and doing what she did, I really, at the end of the day, I do think that it's one of the most brave. Not I don't want to say brave, but just
like more brave. I think that are we allowed to say? This is where I also just want to like give her a little credit. Are we allowed to say that she was very brave in that moment without having to say she's more brave than that Black woman? Right. You know what I mean? And that's where I think the media is fucked up, because they're like,
well, the media
they're trying to make
they're
it be,
worshiping this thing, and I get and that's what I get really grossed out about too. Reading all the articles about it, and it's a lot of white men talking about it, which is also like
very gross.
Yeah, they're objectifying her and all this sort of thing. But like at the end of the day, in that very moment, I want to say, well, you know, if she saw that happening, let's just like speculate here. If she saw that happening and then was overcome, like this is what I think like would be so amazing, is that she was overcome with emotion and knowing the power within her pussy or whatever, you know, the magic of a female body, to walk out naked and to you know, part the seas or to whatever, you know, like that is so powerful. And then also to look down at my breasts and my vagina and understand the power that is within me.
Right.
It gives, like, I have chills right now just thinking of how much change I can do.
Right.
You can do.
Every individual.
And
working together, you know? And I think, again, where this gets complicated is like, is it serving the greater good or not? And that's where we're not sure, really. But I think that just getting that message from that one thing that she did, isn't that worth something? Right. Isn't that worth, you know, is it worth every article in the New LA Times? No, not necessarily. But I think it's too easy to say white privilege. I just think that's where I can't get on board with that easy write-off, because it really is then undermining the power of an individual woman. Right. Yeah. And also the other thing about it is that like, I don't want it to be a thing where people are like, I'm going to also be in the spotlight and take over this narrative. No. But I think it's like, as a white person, it would be kind of cool if you look at that and go, okay, I don't want to take over the story, but I want to participate. And I want to do things to like be able to participate in a listening way, you know? And also, to be honest, if we're changing, you know, she sort of has changed the narrative a little, or you're moving this, you know, the conversation is moving away from Black Lives Matter. Well, luckily we're in a little bit more of an awakened state so that we can go, oh, we're doing it again.
Right.
Cool. Let's like make sure we don't do that.
Right.
So she's even helped with that storyline. Do you know what I mean? Or at least in this conversation we're having. So I think that, like, again, I don't think she is an individual. I don't think we need to like celebrate more than the Black protesters. And I don't think we should do that. But I think that she really has like captured imaginations in a way.
Yes.
Which is really cool.
Yes.
And it's not even her. I mean, she did it, so it's her. But I think partly it's just the image, you know? And like that's what you're saying about the art part of it, is like that image is going to be part of that experience of what happened in Portland. But it should not be the first biggest blown up picture. It should be the small one in the corner that is surrounded by more, you know, more important pictures. But
I think also, to me, that moment, it is art. And it is like, this is where I get very, very scared of like a dictatorship or like a communist rule of like not being able to have these images or feel a certain way or be told that you have to feel this way. Like how amazing that we're able to celebrate whatever that was, but actually have the voice and have the conversations and to say, oh, this made me feel this way, that whatever. Like, because I fell down a crazy rabbit hole this week of like, what is martial law? Can Donald Trump, you know?
It's good that you look that stuff up, though. I mean, in some ways, like, you should know your rights. You
have to know. Yeah, you have to know your rights. And I mean, I don't know. But
I mean, it's terrifying.
It's absolutely terrifying. But we have art, and we can never fucking take that away.
And I think art is also a really good point that like art can also make change. Like, so let's say her intention was performance art. Let's say her full intention was, I'm going to do a performance art piece now. Right. And it wasn't like overcome. Like, what if it was a planned thing, you know? It still worked. Right. I mean, I don't know. There's something about that to me that I just can't quite like just like write off. I'm like, even if it was cheesy ass, like even if we met her, this is why I don't want to hear her talk, because if we meet her and she's like really annoying, I'm gonna be like, God, you just ruined everything. But if she can just be, you know, anonymous, it just is really
it's more powerful that way or something.
And look, maybe I'm hippy dippy and you're like, get the fuck out of here with that nonsense. Like whatever. Okay, you know, you can call me that. You can, you know, that is also a valid way of looking at this whole thing. I mean, even in the New York Times article, she was like, it was weird what she did. And Portland is weird and it's part of whatever.
Keep it weird, all right.
Yeah, and I get that there's a lot of connotations with that too. So that is also correct. I don't know.
Well, I'm glad we saved our convo for the pod, because I was going to call you or text you about it, and then I was like, but you were like, let's unpack.
Like, this is going to be great. Yeah, because there's so many levels to it. And it's not I don't think it's like has to be a fight. Not that I thought it was going to be a fight, but it doesn't have to be like, I think she's great and you think she's terrible. I don't think it's about that. And I don't think she's perfect. I mean, I definitely don't. I mean,
but that's why it's good to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Just keep the convos going but then reflect on what you can do.
Yeah. Can I bring something up that I saw a couple like weeks ago that I sort of wanted to talk about, that it's related to this?
Yeah.
Amanda Seales is just like the best freaking person on Instagram right now, and she really just is like drops truth like real clearly, and I think she's delightful, but I know she's polarizing because she's very honest about stuff. And she had a really good video about whiteness is not a culture. And this is and I bring this up because of that issue of this woman in the Athena position. They claim she's a person of color, but a light-skinned person of color. And if she presents as white, what does it matter? You know, not that it doesn't matter. It matters because that she brings her experiences and whatever, and her experience with her family. Those are very important. I cannot speak to any of that because I am the whitest woman in the world. So I don't want to even really get into biracial whiteness because I cannot speak to that.
Right.
But in terms of like whiteness, what is whiteness? She was just like, listen, people, whiteness is not a culture. Blackness is a culture. Blackness is a culture in spite of white oppression. Blackness has become a culture Probably because, no, I don't want to say because of white oppression, because I don't want to like give white oppression credit for it. But I think the way she says it is perfect. In spite of the oppression. So that you find ways to like have a community. You find ways, even when people tell you, you can't do that. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't have this. You have nothing. A culture has grown from that. And it's amazing, you know? White people don't have a culture. Whiteness isn't a culture. German is a culture. Irishness is a culture. But this concept of whiteness, like, what is that? What is it? And it kind of like was a little hard for me to hear. It might be hard for you to hear. Maybe our listeners are like really resisting this idea. But really think about like, what is it that she was saying like, you should not be proud of your whiteness. You should be proud of yourself as an individual and your accomplishments, but you should not be proud of your whiteness, because all whiteness is oppressing people that are not white. That is all whiteness has been built on, because it's not a culture. It's not like we're all German and we're saving German culture. That's not even what's happening in the United States. Although that's terrifying too, especially I picked Germany, which is the whole Nazi thing. I didn't even do that on purpose. But if you really think about it, like, this idea of white supremacy and white power, it's not real. It's not even a real thing. What's real about it is what you're celebrating is just oppression and oppressing other people.
Whoa.
And that's why it matters when, like, you say, like, when someone says, like, you know, black power, black pride, and then someone says white pride, what is there to be proud of? It's really scary. Like, and I think people don't think it through necessarily when they say white pride. It's more of like a knee-jerk reaction to hearing like, they're like, well, what about me? I want to also be celebrated. But it's like, but what are you celebrating? Like, you really have to ask yourself what you're celebrating there. And so that has like, and even just like things like, I have an old friend who is from a country in South America that like people, her skin is very, very light. She's very white skinned, but she has an accent because she's from a South American country. In the United States, she's not considered white. But she's in her country, she's very white, and she's actually pretty racist against people of dark skin color. So when she came here, she's like, what's happening? Like, why am I not being treated the same as you? And I'm like, because we like to oppress people that are not like us. So like, what is whiteness anyway? So I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. But that, I just kind of wanted to share that on the pod, share that with you. Like, it was a thing that really hit me hard. I was like, damn, I didn't know about that.
Well, a conversation I had actually with a friend of mine last week. She's a black woman. I've known her, since college, and we were talking about the movement and everything and what her perception is of it, because she's in the South and always has been. And she said, I don't feel I'm black enough for this movement.
Right.
And that hit me hard.
Yeah.
With just, I didn't say, oh, well, let me tell you. As I have no answer. This is when I just listen, and I'm here for her as her, But like, that really kind of hit me hard too, is that everyone is grappling, everyone is in their own journey and in their own place with all this, but we're all, I'm learning so much, and just, I'm trying to just listen and to be an ally, but also, there's so much unlearning that I'm doing as well.
Totally, yeah. And just unpacking and trying to like reorganizing.
Yeah.
And I think, those kinds of issues with like biracial children is something I cannot speak to, but they're very complex.
Right.
Because especially I think our generation and older, there's like way more biracial children now, like our friends are having more biracial children, but there was a time.
And let me say, they are the cutest little babies ever. They're so cute.
Beautiful children.
Oh my God.
But like, there's a whole world that we are not, again, not capable of really having a conversation about, but where especially like our generation and older, like there were not a lot of biracial kids at all. So a lot of those kids don't feel like they fit in anywhere. Right. So that's like a whole other thing to unpack. And then what is their race? Like how do we talk about race in those terms? And the truth is, we're moving into a world where there's going to be more mixing, which is great in my opinion. But some people are terrified of it. Some people
are absolutely terrified.
And some people are terrified. Some white people are terrified. Some black people are terrified. Some, Asian people are terrified. Like, some people don't want that mixing at all. And it's not just white people, but a lot of white people don't want it. But the other thing is, I just wanted to throw out another faux pas of mine, a big one, was a couple, a couple of years ago, I was at a party. I was a little bit drunk, and I was talking to this really lovely lady, and we were talking about like race stuff was coming up. I don't remember what specifically because I'm a little drunk, but then something came up where I'd been talking to her all night, and I just assumed she was white, and she said something about like, well, my race, and I was like, what race are you? And she's like, I'm Middle Eastern. And I was like, oh, I had no idea. You look so white. Like, you're just so white presenting. Wow, you're really white looking. And I kind of kept like saying it. And I'm looking at her face, and she just starts to kind of like drop. Like she's closing down. She's like not, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I did the wrong thing. And I realized, even in that moment, I just like stripped with one label. I just stripped her of her entire experience in her culture with her family. I stripped her of her identity by just being like, you look white, that is like, and I think that that's the other thing I wonder about this individual through the Athena thing, for people just to be like, well, she looks white. That's so, that's also such a flippant way to deal with her, because it's like, of course she has privileges because of her and I did talk a little bit longer with this other girl where she was like, well, she's like, I am way more white presenting than like my sister who's like very dark skin. So I know that there's like a different, but then it felt like she was having to explain herself to me, and that's not okay. She doesn't have to explain herself to me. So that, I just think that that's an important thing too, that it doesn't not matter that this woman who's Athena identifies as a person of color, because we don't know her experience is. So I think that that's a tricky little thing too, where, and again, cannot really speak to it because I'm just a white girl, but I think it's right that there is something in there.
But that's what like shook me when you said actually before you said somebody had sent me a thing like saying that she's actually a person of color, because I was like, but this screams white privilege to me. What if this person had been black? Like, as we all know, we're learning the statistics. The outcome probably would have been different. And then a friend of mine was like, what if I tell you she's a person of color? And then you said as well. And I was like, wow, that's like on me, on my perception. And it definitely made me stop and think, like, before I speak, I need the whole story type of thing. Sure. I mean, but also that like we still don't know the whole story.
No, and we probably never, and hopefully we never will know. But also that like these things are complicated, right. And that we shouldn't just and it's beautiful that they're complicated. And that I think that makes me excited, really. Mm-hmm. And that also like it begs the question: what is whiteness? Mm-hmm. If you look white, aren't you white? Mm-hmm. Well, no, not necessarily, because you have a whole other culture that we don't know. But if you're treated white, I mean, this is again, I don't really know. I don't know because I can't really talk about stuff. But it's really like, what does it mean? What is if whiteness is just about my ability to oppress other people easily, or my ability to walk through this world and get what I want when other people can't? That's just an interesting thing. That's just not, that's, again, not a culture.
Well, Bill Nye has been doing some really cool things on race on TikTok, actually. And he did, his explanation recently that went viral this week was that everyone is from Africa, and it's all about the pigments in our skin and how we perceive the sun and
migration.
But the scientists. Yeah. And so it was just like, any fucking racist, I just want to show them the Bill Nye thing and be like, we're all humans, you fucking moron,
No, I know, totally. And it's definitely it's definitely like a socially constructed thing to be like, oh, these people are less than and these people are greater than. Right. I'll tell you what though, I was contemplating this idea that like, oh wow, like in the future, like I have a black friend, she calls it like the browning of America, where like you mix more and then everybody kind of becomes the same complexion. So like, let's say one day we're all the same kind of like
and
complexion.
That's kind of what they
imagine is going to happen, especially with globalization and stuff. And that is like logically just like genetically. And I was like, that's not going to solve anything. Then we will find new ways to oppress people. Yeah. We will find, unless we have another like brain opening, like we step to another, what is that called? Not dogma, but like another
utopia.
No, but like another, like you just have like another paradigm. We have a paradigm shift where we all go like, oh, wait a minute, we're actually beings that are not. I mean, there's a whole other. I'm not gonna get all that, but the idea that like if we can break some of those like mental like animal chains and become like the next level of being, and be able to go, oh right. Then we'll probably just oppress like dolphins all the time or something. I don't know.
I fucking hate dolphins.
Yeah, that was a jerk.
Stupid dolphins.
I was always parking in the bike lane. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway. Well, this is enlightening. I mean, again, if anybody heard anything and they're like, you white ladies, stop talking about this shit.
You don't know what
I totally get that. And I think I'm really trying hard to like make sure it's clear to everyone that this is just from my lens and from your lens, which is clearly a white lens. And you're kind of watching us unlearn and unpack and, you know.
But I think it's really, really important to have these conversations. I was excited for you to come over for us to unpack all this because obviously you had one perception and I had another. Yeah. So let's fucking talk about it. Yeah. And that's what we just did. So
and we have zero answers.
No answers. Zero answers. Yeah, but maybe you have the answers. So email us at difficultwomenpodcast@gmail.com.
You probably don't have the answers either. No, I don't know. Maybe you do.
Maybe you do.
I don't know. If you're Athena, you probably do. Please don't email us if you're Athena. I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Well, one thing I did want to mention, please join us on Patreon, folks.
Yes.
We're actually going to be working on our third album now that I'm back in Brooklyn.
So exciting.
And guess who gets the first listening of it are our Patrons. Yeah, our patrons. So go on over to Patreon. We're under Reformed Horse. So check us out over there. Anything else you'd like to add?
I just love. I just also want to say, just wrap up this idea. If everybody's like having a nervous breakdown right now about like what's going on in Portland, one of the cool things was that like last night or something, and this is when we're recording this, more people keep joining the protests. They're not being scared off by the feds, and that's fucking cool.
It is so power in numbers.
Yeah, we just have to keep showing up.
Yeah,
that's all.
Growing up down south, I was a good Christian girl. Living in my parents' house, I followed all of their rules. Never once did I make one single mistake. Till that day came when I learned how to masturbate. My Care Bear, you see, had a button for a nose. If I rubbed up against him, my temperature it rose. The feeling that it gave me made me tingle down there. Life was pretty swell when I was humping that bear. Life was pretty grand, hardly had to use my hands. Those days won't be forgotten, with my love puppet made of cotton. Life was so darn easy, that little bear sure could please me. Dreamt we'd go to Never Never Land and have a threesome with Peter Pan. But one day I came home and my dear friend was missing. I think my daddy might have seen me all grinding and a kissing. I asked very politely where my sunshine bear had gone. Mama said she threw him out in a trash bag on the lawn. You could hear my heart breaking as the garbage truck pulled up. I thought to myself, goddamn, what now will I fuck? I whispered very softly, I'll find you again someday. Till then, with my mother's